last story I'm going to tell is a scary story. Children need to be reassured that no matter what problem confronts them, they can overcome it. And this scary story is about a little girl who meets a terrible monster and what happens. This monster has many names. She lives all along the Pacific Northwest coast. To the north, they call her Zunaqua. To the east, they call her Tataslia. To the south, they call her Dashkea. But to the west, the Klallam people call her Slapoo. And Slapoo is a giant monster, 10 feet tall. She's covered with long black fur like a bear, only she never ever takes a bath, so her hair is all dirty and greasy and stinky and matted, and they say you can smell her coming before you can hear or see her. She wanders the woods at night carrying a big basket on her back, so sometimes they call her Basket Woman. And she's looking for her dinner, and her dinner is children. Children that are running around in the woods by themselves in the dark because, of course, all children know they shouldn't be out there in the dark by themselves. They should be at home, eating their dinner, getting ready for bed. But you know there are some, they don't listen to anybody. And that's who she's looking for, the ones who don't listen to their parents or to their teachers. She has terrible sharp claws like an owl, and when she grabs that child, she throws them in the basket, and she takes them way up into the mountains, where she has a big fire going all the time. And this is a scary part, so you can turn the volume down now if you want. She has a big long toenail, and she dumps that child onto the ground. And with that big long toenail that's like a knife, she cuts them up. She puts them in the fire, she cooks them, and she eats them. She's a terrible monster, and you don't ever want to meet her. If you listen to your parents, you shouldn't have any problem, but you know how easy it is for her to find bad children, or as we call them today, inappropriate behavior children. It's very easy for her, because, well, in some ways, they are like her. Do you remember how dirty, greasy, and stinky her hair was because she never took a bath and you could smell her coming? Well, bad children are the same way. They don't like to take baths, and when their parents tell them it's time for a bath, they run and they hide, so after a while, they smell too. And Slapoo stands up in the mountains, and when the wind is just right, coming from the villages below, she goes, dirty, stinky little kids. And then she follows that smell down the trails, down the rivers to the villages below, and then she listens, because those same bad kids that don't like to take baths, they don't know how to be quiet. They don't know how to sit still and listen respectfully. They're always running around, always talking, always making noise. And she goes, dirty, stinky, noisy little kids. And then she waits in the woods outside their house because she knows that one night soon it's going to be dirty, stinky, noisy, sneaky little kids. Those little kids are going to come sneaking out of the house, and they're going to run around in the woods by themselves because they don't listen to anybody. Nobody can make them do what they don't want to do, and they don't believe in any old Slapoo anyway. And that's when she grabs them with her sharp claws, puts them in the basket, and takes them up into the mountains for her dinner. Well, this is the story about a little girl who met her and what happened. A long time ago, in a village not far from here, there lived a little girl. And the only way I can describe this little girl is she was trouble. This little girl would talk back to her parents. She would say, "No, I don't want to do that. Leave me alone." She was disrespectful to her grandparents. When she was supposed to help them, she would say, "You guys are so slow. I'm leaving you behind." She was mean to the little kids. When she was supposed to watch them, she would push them on the ground when no one was looking and laugh at them as they were crying. Whenever her mother cooked deer, she would say, "Ugh, I hate deer. I wanted, salmon." Whenever her mother cooked salmon, she would say, "Ugh, I hate salmon. I wanted, elk stew." Whatever her mother cooked was not good enough. So this little girl was mean. She would talk back. She was never happy. I hope this doesn't sound like any little girl that you know. Well, one day her mother had enough and called her over. "Young lady, you come over here." The little girl walked up to her mother and she said, "What?" And the mother said, "Why are you always arguing and talking back? You have to learn to help. You have to learn to—" The little girl said, "Ugh, you're picking on me. Leave me alone." And then the grandmother came up. "Oh, granddaughter, listen to your mother. When she says you have to learn to respect people, you have to—" The little girl said, "Now you're picking on me too. You guys are always picking on me, always trying to make me do things I don't want to do. I hate it here. I'm running away and I'm never coming back." And that little girl ran out the door into the woods, even though it was getting dark. The mother and the grandmother ran up to the door and they called out, "Daughter, granddaughter, please come back. It's getting dark and Slapoo is out there looking for children like you." That little girl didn't listen. She ran deep into the woods and she found a trail. And she was walking along the trail talking to herself. She was saying, "They're so mean to me there. They're always picking on me and trying to make me do things I don't want to do. And then they try to scare me with some story about old Slapoo. Well, I don't believe—" She heard something. Something was coming through the woods. Something was getting closer. And then something was in the bushes right beside her. And from the dark bushes, she heard this voice. Little girl, come over here. I have huckleberries for you." The little girl started to back away from the voice, but the voice said, "No, little girl, don't you walk away from me. Come back here. I picked them just for you." That little girl turned and she started to run. And as she was running away from that voice along the trail, something was running on the trail behind her. She looked back, and all she could see in the dark woods was a big dark shadow with two red glowing eyes, and she ran faster. But as she ran faster, it ran faster too, and it was getting closer. The little girl ran to where the trail ended, and it emptied onto a beach. She ran down into the beach, and she looked around, and she saw an old man. He was pulling his canoe out of the water onto the beach, and in the canoe were baskets of crabs. He was a crab fisherman coming home from catching crabs that day. The little girl ran up to him, and she said, "Oh, please, sir, please, can you help me? Please, sir, something terrible is trying to catch me." The old man listened. He heard something big coming through the woods. And he said, "Who is chasing you, little girl?" She said, "Slapoo is chasing me. Oh, please, sir, please, you have to help me." The old man said, "Oh, little girl, Slapoo, she is a giant monster with terrible claws, and I'm just an old man. There's nothing I can do. I'm sorry." The little girl said, "There must be something you can do." And she looked around the beach very quickly. She looked around and she saw out in the water, just off the beach a little ways, was a little island of rocks. She said, "Can't you take me to that little island of rocks out there, and I can hide from Slapoo?" Now he was a nice old man, and he wanted to help her. He told her to jump in his canoe, and he pushed it back in the water, and then he very quickly paddled her out to that little island of rocks. When they got there, she jumped out of the canoe onto the rocks, and there were some bushes there, and she hid in the bushes. And then the old man turned his canoe around, and he paddled it back to the beach. And he was pulling his canoe back up onto the beach when out of the woods came Slapoo. And she walked right up to the old man, and she put her face right in front of his, and he could smell her terrible foul breath. And she said, "Old man, have you seen a little girl around here?" The old man looked at her and he said, No, Slapoo, I haven't seen anybody." She said, "Liar. I followed her tracks down the trail, right to the beach, right to your canoe. Where is she?" And Slapoo started to dig through his canoe, but there were only baskets of crabs in the canoe, and the old man kept saying, "I don't know, Slapoo, I haven't seen anybody." Slapoo stood up, and she put her claws right in front of his face, and she said, "Old man, if you don't tell me, you will be my dinner." And the old man kept saying, "I don't know, Slapoo, I haven't seen anybody." Well, Slapoo started to look around the beach, and then she looked in the water, and she saw that little island of rocks. And she saw, on that island, the bushes were shaking. The little girl was hiding, but she was so frightened. The bushes were shaking, and Slapoo said, "Oh, there she is. There's my dinner. Old man, take me in your canoe to that island. I'm hungry." The old man said, "Okay, Slapoo, I'll take you. Get in my canoe." And so Slapoo got in the front of the canoe, and the old man pushed it in the water and started to slowly paddle towards that little island of rocks. Slapoo was sitting in the front of the canoe, looking ahead, thinking about her dinner. And when the old man was sure she was looking away, he bent down to the basket of crabs next to him, and he whispered, "Bite her on the big toe." Slapoo turned around and said, "Be quiet, old man. I don't want to hear you talking." And she turned away again. The old man waited a few more seconds, and then he bent down and he whispered again to the basket of crabs, "Bite her on the big toe." Slapoo turned around again and said, "I told you to be quiet, old man. This is my last warning." The old man waited again until he was sure she was looking away, and then one more time he said, "Bite her on the big toe." And this time the crabs heard, and they jumped out of the basket, and they bit her on the big toe. They bit her on the foot, on the legs, on the arms, on the fingers, on the face, even on her nose. And Slapoo jumped up and screamed, "Ah!" And she jumped out of the canoe into the water, and the crabs dragged her to the bottom of the ocean. Some smart kids think that this means that she's gone and we don't have to worry anymore. But the native stories say she has 3 sisters, just as mean and just as hungry as her, and they wander the woods at night looking for their dinner. And the other thing, if you've ever been out on a boat or a canoe or a ferry on the salt water, I'm sure you've seen bubbles coming from under the water. Do you know who that is? That is Slapoo. She's waiting for a careless child to splash their hand in the water or to lean too far over the edge of the boat, and then she'll grab them and pull them to the bottom of the ocean for her dinner. And that is all. Now in this story, the little girl defeats the monster, defeats this terrible problem by doing 4 things. 4 things that if we do when we confront a great problem can help us overcome it. First, she used her own brain. She didn't listen to the voice in the bushes. She ran away from it. And on the beach, she saw that little island of rocks herself and said, "Take me there. I can hide there." She used her own brain. She asked the old man to help her. If ever you have a great problem, ask someone to help you. She changed her ways. Instead of going to that old man in her snotty girl little voice and saying, "Hey, old man, help me," she said, "Oh, please, sir, please help me. I need your help." She changed her ways. If ever you do something that causes a problem or gets you in trouble, do something else. And the last thing, the little girl didn't beat the monster by herself. The little girl and the old man didn't beat the monster by themselves. But the little girl, the old man, and the crabs, working together, they defeated the monster. If we work together, we can solve problems. We can do great things. And that is a teaching of the native people.